Well, I worked for the company all up with the haulage of the timber from the bush on the trucks, sawn timber from the mills, first to the rail and then on to Brisbane. Got bigger tractors to keep up with the output of the mills, and I spent 35 years with that company.
During the early part of the 1930s, Australian men and women fought hard to maintain a rugged but enjoyable way of life. The building of the world's longest viaduct bridge was a major achievement for a community that was in the heart of a depression. The Hornibrook Bridge was this nation's first major venture between the public and private sectors, and by any measure was a huge success.
Bridges are fascinating structures. Quite simply, they join two pieces of isolated land, or span a deep ravine. What is perhaps more fascinating is the respect people have for bridges of all kinds. Proof of the respect that people have for bridges comes in the saying, particularly used with the gullible, "If you believe that, I've got a bridge you might like to buy." This saying originates from the 20th century con artist George C. Parker, who allegedly sold the Brooklyn Bridge numerous times to naive investors.
The Hornibrook Bridge may not have been sold to a gullible public, but it still has the same mystique. Constructed between 1932 and 1935, the Hornibrook Bridge is one of the first road toll facilities in Queensland to be authorised by a special Act of Parliament. It is notable as a major public work constructed by private enterprise at a time of great economic depression in Queensland. The bridge was the major impetus for the development of Redcliffe. Its significance also lies in its relationship to the vision of its builder, Manuel Hornibrook, to develop the potential of the city of Redcliffe.
Well, it really opened up the main route into Redcliffe, because prior to that, the only way to get to Redcliffe was by ferry across from Sandgate or Anzac Avenue, which was built round about, I think it was open around about 1926, became very impassable from time to time with flooding and stuff, particularly out at Saltwater Creek. So the bridge really gave a constant route to Redcliffe, flood-free. I don't think the bridge was ever closed, except maybe in one or two very bad cyclones. But it really opened up the peninsula, and that's probably evidenced by the number of people that used to come here. I think Redcliffe in those days had a population around about 12,000 people from memory, and at holiday times those crowds used to just bump up to anywhere from 60 to even 100,000 people, I heard.
Prior to the construction of the Hornibrook Viaduct, the Redcliffe Peninsula was accessed by ferry and road. Road transportation was of great concern to the residents of the Redcliffe area. During times of wet weather, the Redcliffe Road, running via Petrie, frequently became impassable to vehicles. Several schemes have been drafted to improve the accessibility of the Redcliffe area to vehicle owners and also to the growing day tripper market having seaside holidays at Redcliffe. Hornibrook had holidayed in this area and saw the development potential of Redcliffe being linked by road to Brisbane. The onset of the Depression of 1929 to 1933 prompted Hornibrook to plan and construct a road viaduct across from Redcliffe to Sandgate.
Well, as I mentioned before, the number of people that came here was a great boon to business. The number of campers particularly, that really set the peninsula ahead for tourism and business opportunity. They had, I can remember seeing photos of campers. They used to camp the whole of the way around the peninsula, from Clontarf and Woody Point to Scotts Point, Margate, Sutton's Beach, Redcliffe in front of the police station, out to Scarborough in front of the Scarborough Hotel, and even out to Reef Point. So there was thousands of people there, but on top of that, it opened up opportunities for employment, because you had maintenance people, of course, with the bridge. You had toll collectors, and there was even a new bus service started, which was the Hornibrook bus service. M.R.
Hornibrook was a dynamic man, one of those people destined for greatness. He was confident, diligent, and always maintained a keen focus on every project he undertook.
In 1931, Hornibrook approached the state government with a proposal to construct a toll bridge linking the southern part of Redcliffe with the Sandgate area. Initially, this proposal was rejected. After further consultation with the state government, an Act of Parliament was pushed through, allowing for the involvement of private enterprise in the construction of toll facilities.
I believe Hornibrooks themselves decided they needed good quality timber, and they found it round Kilcoy and Jimna, and I think they just contacted local timber cutters there, and they were lucky. They were there cutting at the time.
Oh, well, I think at the time the timber cutters used to get $1.100 to cut the timber, and I think it was 4 bob 100 I used to get to snig it. So that'd be, work that out in your modern day, Carl. And your month's work would finish. You'd get a statement from the bloke manager in the office at the mill, and then you would get your cheque at the 20th of the next month. But it would never be posted to you. If you were missed out when they brought the pays up to the mill for the mill staff, well, it might be a week over or something like that before you got your cheque for the next.
Dad's name was Frederick McEwen, and he was born in Kilcoy, or not in Kilcoy actually, Monsondale. He cut a lot of timber for Yedna and the Queensland soft and hardwood mills. Eventually he got into, when the Hornibrook Bridge was being built, he got into cutting the girders and that sort of thing, and the story is he cut about 80% of them.
Work officially commenced on the project on June the 8th, 1932, but its first 18 months' progress was limited due to a lack of finance. The entry portals at either end of the bridge were completed in early 1933, but the continuing depression forced Hornibrook to find additional funds to achieve the planned 1935 completion date. Finally, a major flotation was supported by a £100,000 loan from the AMP Society, a loan that was guaranteed by the state government. Over 2.5 million super feet of timber was needed to provide girders and decking on the bridge. 2 sawmills were bought specially to process timber from the Mount Mee and Conondale ranges, and 250 timber getters were employed to cut the required amount of timber.
Yeah, well, Seth Skinner was, he was one of the major timber cutters up around Jimna there for many years, but he decided to give it away and go into buses, and he spent many years with his bus line, but he passed away a few years ago. Other than that, I don't know a lot about him, but he used to tell a few stories about different ones that worked up around there, and one fellow in particular who went to Mr. Hornibrook and asked him if he had a job for him, and he had an old flat top truck, and Hornibrook told him if he could get about 4 girders on the truck, and that he could bring them back from Jimna to the bridge. So he found his way up there, and they loaded 4 girders on there for him, and when they went to tie him up, he only had a 1/2-inch rope, so the other fellas up there decided that wouldn't hold those girders on there, so they loaned him some chains and that, and they sent him on his way. But he got to the first hill, and the truck wouldn't go up, so they had to unload 1 girder. Anyhow, he got over that one, and then he got caught on another one, and he had to unload another girder. By the time he got down to Yedna, he only had 1 girder, and so he offloaded that. He reckoned it was no good going all the way back to Hornibrooks with 1 girder, so he offloaded that, and the other chaps from up at the loading dock, they got down to Yedna and found out he'd discarded all the girders, and their chains weren't there, so that they'd loaned him. So they thought he was a bit of a lousy scumbag and called him that, But when they got down to Kilcoy with their loads, they found that he had left the change with the local storekeeper, so they decided he wasn't too bad a bloke after all. But he never got any girders, he never came back.
Concrete was supplied from the QCL works at Darra, with the two portals being the first significant structures in Queensland to use material from this source. The last plank on the viaduct was spiked into place on September the 7th, 1935. The bitumen road surface was laid in less than 3 weeks, setting an Australian record. The construction of the bridge was similar to other bridges in Queensland, but when it was completed, it was the longest road viaduct built over water in the Southern Hemisphere. The Hornibrook Highway Bridge is 2.6 kilometres long. It's a timber and concrete bridge that spans Hayes Inlet and Bramble Bay between Clontarf Point and Brighton, linking Sandgate to Redcliffe. It has identical rendered concrete portals at each end and 2 rises along its length which permit small boats to pass underneath. The viaduct was opened to road traffic on October the 4th, 1935, foreshortening the road journey by several hours. Also, a special coordinated road rail bus service was inaugurated by the company to convey commuters between Sandgate and Redcliffe.
Yeah, it was already established. They used to have their garage and offices at the Sandgate railway station, and they were green and yellow buses, Hornibrook buses, and they only used to go from Sandgate to Redcliffe. They didn't do the round trips like they do now, like out into the suburbs or anything like that. It was just, you used to have to walk down to the front esplanade, and that's where your bus stops were, all on the main drag.
Roy Atkins is the son and namesake of the first Hornibrook tollmaster and recalls some of the mischief he and his friends created living so close to the bridge. His sister, Joy Brennan, recounts a lifestyle that was so typical of that post-Depression, post-war period.
I was 13 when we were in the toll house, and I used to ride a push bike from there to Margate, Sutton Beach, to Simon's store. That's where I used to work. Wednesdays, them days, used to be a half day. You'd work from 8 in the morning till 11, and the shops would close. And I'd ride all the way home from there to the toll house, and then Dad would say, right, over to golf, because that was ladies' day over at golf.
That was 1935. Fast forward to 1975, in the same location, and things have changed a fair bit. The Redcliffe area is now quite affluent, the residents are enjoying a high standard of living, and big changes are about to take place.
By the 1970s, increasing road volumes brought the investigation of a replacement structure capable of carrying the additional traffic. The Hornibrook Highway franchise was surrendered in 1975 after 40 years of operation by the company. At this time, the Main Roads Department assumed responsibility for maintaining the structure.
The Hornibrook Highway was a major catalyst in accelerating the urban development of the Redcliffe Peninsula and its surrounding areas. Its planning, operation and construction represented a major innovation at a time of extreme economic crisis.
A replacement viaduct was authorised by Main Roads in 1977 to cope with the increasing traffic flows to and from the Redcliffe Peninsula. The Houghton Highway, as the new bridge was named, opened to traffic in 1979. The Hornibrook Highway was closed to vehicular traffic with the opening of the replacement structure and has since been used as a pedestrian thoroughfare and a bikeway.
Well, I worked for the company all up with the haulage of the timber from the bush on the trucks, sawn timber from the mills, first to the rail and then on to Brisbane. Got bigger tractors to keep up with the output of the mills, and I spent 35 years with that company.
With rising traffic levels on the old Hornibrook Bridge in the 1970s, the Department of Main Roads investigated the construction of another structure to increase capacity and cope with future demand.
The bridge was mooted for by my father, who was a local member of Parliament at the time, and prior to that he'd been the mayor of the city of Redcliffe, and he was pushing for this bridge for a long time, the new bridge, because the old bridge, the Hornibrook Highway, just couldn't cope with the traffic, and so while he was the member of Parliament, it was built by the government. It was a government authority that built it, and he was a member at the time, and he had the honour for it to be named after him.
The government authorised construction of a new bridge in 1977, and the Houghton Highway opened on the 20th of December 1979 by the then Premier of Queensland, the Honourable Sir Joe Bjelke-Petersen.
At the opening day, they opened the bridge and allowed people to walk across, and one of the local charities even charged a fee for the privilege, and that was a good community fundraiser. But I can remember my mother got there early, naturally, for the opening of the bridge, and which was at the Brighton end or the southern end, and they had all the official seats there, and there was a gentleman sitting in the front row, and she was a bit perturbed to see that someone is sitting in the front row, and she walked up to him and she said, "Oh, excuse me, sir," she said, "but I think you'll have to sit down the back because these seats are reserved for the official guests." And he said, "I'm Ralph Hunt, the Federal Minister for Transport."
The Houghton Highway is named after the Honourable James Jim Houghton, former member for Redcliffe and Speaker.
Yes, and my father, he's been compared to Mr Hornibrook in many ways because they were both visionaries, and when that bridge was built, the new Houghton Highway, he said it's got to be 6 lanes in width, and the government laughed at him at the time, but time has proved him correct because we really do need a 6-lane bridge there, and even before all the equipment was removed, after the bridge was even built, he said, "No, while it's still here, let's still keep going ahead with further lanes." And that was proven within another 6 months after the bridge was built. It was 3 lanes, 2 each way and a stopping lane. They had to add that extra lane and made it a tidal flow because it just couldn't cope with the extra traffic.
Without any option to rejuvenate the old Hornibrook Bridge, in October 1982, the Department of Main Roads ordered an investigation into modifying the Houghton Highway, just 10 months after it opened. Facing an awkward situation where the new bridge would not deliver any increased capacity, the modification of the bridge was to be urgently completed within 12 months. A notable characteristic of the Houghton Highway, other than its significant length, is the particularly rough surface and therefore ride quality. In addition, each concrete span has a slight concave curve, so a distinct corrugated ride is felt when driving over the bridge. These unfinished surface characteristics are due to the absence of a bitumen overlay.
In February 2004, an RACQ survey found that the Houghton Highway was the #1 pain in the neck for Queensland motorists.
When the Houghton Highway was built, it was going to be 2 lanes into Brisbane, and the old Hornibrook Highway would be 2 lanes out, or vice versa, and that never happened because the Hornibrook was found to be in such need of repair that the Houghton Highway was the only one that was put into service, and Redcliffe's had traffic problems even since the time that the Houghton Highway was opened in 1979 to the present time.
Respondents identified problems such as insufficient capacity, problems with tidal flow, or an accident or breakdown on the bridge causing major congestion, and an inappropriate speed limit of 60 kilometres an hour. The lack of consideration given by authorities to another bridge crossing angered motorists. New concerns about the increasing traffic demands and questions about the capacity of the Houghton Highway started in the late 1990s. The issue was agitated every time a crash caused delays, with the closure of 1 or 2 lanes or the entire bridge, while the scene was investigated, then cleared up. Similarly, vehicle breakdowns on the bridge blocked lanes, also causing congestion and delays.
With the network getting more congested, with more traffic that we're seeing on the roads these days, we can manage the traffic better and monitor the traffic. Whenever there's an incident, we have a relationship with the emergency services. Emergency services respond and deal with the traffic, and then the traffic control centre can monitor the outer perimeters of the incident to see what the traffic is doing.
In order to dispel public concern, the Department of Main Roads ordered an upgrade into the bridge's tidal flow system.
Commissioned in 2002 at a cost of $1.8 million, this upgrading included the replacement of the overhead arrow and cross signals with brighter displays. There was monitoring of the traffic flows and conditions, with supervision of the system data, and a view of the bridge by CCTV at the remote Traffic Management Centre in Woolloongabba, Brisbane. Operators were, for the first time, also able to close and open lanes as required from the remote location.
The upgrade project suffered delays, compelling the Transport and Main Roads Minister, the Honourable Steve Bredhauer, to thank the Redcliffe residents for their patience.
Just 6 months later, the Minister apologised for extensive delays after the system failed. A council contractor cut both the main and backup power supplies to the tidal flow system just before 10 o'clock in the morning. Evening peak hour traffic was severely disrupted and banked up for several kilometres as the bridge fell into safe mode. There was just one lane open in each direction for over 10 hours until Energex reconnected the power at 8 p.m.
If there's a major failure with the system, Main Roads has got plans in place that if we lose the control system totally, we can put physical devices in. Generally, you'll find that it'll either be one half of the bridge that will go into failure mode, where we can maintain one half of the bridge open, which still may require some physical devices to go out, but we've got that in the planning and we can make that happen very responsibly. Okay, the system's designed, if it does go into failure, we call it a safe mode, where the centre lane will be disabled and you'll get no vehicles allowed to drive on the centre lane until the system has been rectified.
Continuing disquiet about the bridge and calls for it to be duplicated or replaced were persistently rejected by the government. However, within 3 months, the Queensland Premier, the Honourable Peter Beattie, issued a statement announcing a study into when a new Redcliffe Bridge might be built. A reason for this change of position included campaigning by the Redcliffe City Council and a study they commissioned into the duplication of the bridge.
Well, I think everybody on the north side of Brisbane will be main beneficiaries. You should see the number of cars that come through Redcliffe and the peninsula from properties further out north, you know, from Deception Bay, Marumba Downs and Caboolture areas. People come down there because the main highways are getting choked, and they use Redcliffe and the highway, for want of a better word, as a rat running exercise. So if the bridge is, the new bridge comes into being, a lot of that traffic will not be bogged up on the, or clogged up on the Anzac Avenue, but that traffic will move much freer, and I'm sure it'll service all of those parts in the north of Brisbane, not just Redcliffe, but it will be a big boon to Redcliffe at the same time.
Also, the powers to be would have been aware of a community frustrated by the apparent lack of interest in the matter by the state government. The duplication of the Houghton Highway has now been announced and is a carbon copy of the existing bridge. Like the original intention when the bridge first opened, it will incorporate a shared pedestrian and cycling footway. This time, however, it is to be separated from traffic by a concrete barrier, thereby being much safer.
The actual construction of the bridge will only take 2 years. We needed the extra year up front to design it and also to consult with the community to make sure that it meets all of the stakeholders' needs. The contract will actually be awarded late this year, that's 2007, for construction starting either late this year or early 2008. But the actual bridge will be open to traffic at the end of 2009.
The existing bridge will be converted for 3 lanes of southbound traffic, with the new bridge carrying northbound traffic.
Engineering standards have changed a great deal since 1932. We build bridges for heavier loads and we build them for safer operating conditions. So there will always be a difference between something built in 1932 and something built now. The biggest differences are in the materials that are used for building the bridge. The existing Hornibrook Bridge is built from concrete down in the substructure with timber superstructure on top, some 12 million super feet of timber. The existing Houghton Bridge and the new duplicate are both built predominantly from precast concrete, which is much more able to stand up to the harsh marine environment. The other things that are different is the height. The existing Hornibrook Highway Bridge is quite low. The Houghton Highway Bridge was lifted up a little more, and the new bridge will be 5.4 metres higher than the original Hornibrook Bridge. Things that have changed since then also are the available technology. We're able to build longer spans, so we need less piers in the actual bay. In terms of the similarities, they're both round about the same length. The new one will be slightly longer. And the construction techniques that were used back in 1932 haven't changed a whole lot to today.
Just in relation to things that have happened in Redcliffe since the highway, the Hornibrook Highway, was opened, as I say, it became a lifeline really to Redcliffe, and council used that lifeline in that we never had a water supply in Redcliffe. Now Redcliffe has a water supply, and a lot of it comes from Brisbane across the highway. You know, there's water pipes underneath the Hornibrook Highway. And with the development that's gone since then, it really did open up Redcliffe. Mr. Hornibrook, he had a lot of land at Clontarf, which when the bridge opened, he sold that land at Clontarf. He had acres and acres of it, and he sold that land to form the first Peninsula Golf Club, and I think he sold it for something like about £1,450, which is quite a very, very cheap sum. Some people that have come to here for a visit, which might have only been for a week or two, they've stayed, and some of those people are now, you know, generational. They've been here, their kids are here, their grandkids are here now. They just stay, and Redcliffe's a community like that, that it has bonds. My family, for example, has been here since about 1880s. And I should be rich, but there's more to life when you come to Redcliffe than trying to amass money, because it's a lifestyle, and it's the lifestyle that really gets people.
The old bridge is now experiencing problems of decay, including the cracking of the decking surface caused by rotting planks, the corrosion of steel in the concrete piers, and white ants in the girders.
A third bridge is to be built beside the current concrete structure in order to cope with current and future traffic flows. Sadly, as with the cycle of life, the Hornibrook Bridge will be demolished and yet another phase of history will pass.
The Hornibrook Bridge is a monument to public and community enterprise, and of special pride to the people who live in the district. This is despite the delays and procrastination in the approval processes.
Are major public projects that involve the whole community a thing of the past? Will we ever again see great projects like the Hornibrook Highway or the Story Bridge? Ponder this thought. Do you really care? And if so, what are you going to do about it?
We posed that question some years ago, and now in 2011, the Hornibrook Bridge is being demolished. We spoke with Queensland Main Roads Minister Craig Wallace.
In October 1935, an historic piece of infrastructure was opened in Queensland, our original Hornibrook Bridge. In those days, it cost about 10 cents to cross that bridge in a car and 5 cents in a motorbike. How times have changed. We've got our brand new Tedsmouth Bridge, $315 million. That was opened earlier this year. A lot of people say to me, what are we doing with that old original structure from 1935? Unfortunately, we've got to pull down most of it. It's far exceeded its life expectancy. A lot of it's treated with arsenic and would pose a danger to that local community. If we were to put it back into its original state, it means we'd have to cut down a lot of trees to replace that wood there. So we're pulling down most of that structure to make it safe, recycling what timber we can for some of our bridges right across Queensland, and there's some very good timber there that we'll put to use. And on the Redcliffe side, we'll make about 100 metres of it into an historical portal for the community to remember well into the future.
Given responsibility for the deconstruction of the Hornibrook Bridge is Greg Taylor, Managing Director of Ironbark Demolition. Juanita Grayson asked him whether he expected any opposition from the local community toward the demolition.
In the course of the demolition, you may come across some opposition to the project. How would you deal with that?
Well, the public, if understand how deteriorated it is, it's not possible to retain it as it is. Certain components will be retained. Obviously, the portals here, very significant, and but due to the poor state, it's become dangerous not only to the public on top of it, but anyone that happens to pass underneath it in a boat. There's actually components just falling. It's just not feasible to rebuild, and the trees simply aren't around. If it was to be reconstructed in a similar way, the timber is simply not there anymore.
The bridge was constructed in 1935 primarily out of timber. What is the condition of that timber today, and is there much of it that can be recycled?
A lot of it can. For example, you know, a bridge girder could be 9 metres long. 4 or 5 metres of that particular piece is reusable, but it could be ready to fall in the water because the ends of either white ants or dry rot. But it'll be a long time before we know the exact percentage, but we recycle every piece possible.
Every single piece?
Yeah.
And we understand that much of the timber to be recycled is ironbark, although not all of it.
Yeah.
Is this timber valuable, and how will it be disposed?
Oh yeah, it's very valuable. It's a long process to remill it, reuse it. There's certain contaminants that have to be dealt with. Obviously old rusty steel before any resawing can be done, remilling. But a lot of it will end up back in houses, clubs, restaurants, buildings, as much as possible.
And do you cut any of it on the bridge while you're there?
No, we actually dismantle the whole bridge without a chainsaw. Environmental reasons mainly, and also if there is good timber, that it's more valuable if you cut it up, or you can't put it through a saw if it's too short, and the longer the better.
When we spoke with the Main Roads Minister recently, he commented that part of the northern end of the bridge will be reconstructed. How will that come about?
Given that the state government has recognised that the Hornibrook Bridge is a significant local landmark, will there be any part of the bridge that is left to the community for posterity?
Yes. There's actually we're finding the best of the best components for reconstruction. There'll be 9 spans rebuilt to look as constructed back many years ago. There is also, obviously these portals will stay, some fishing platform, and there's other parts that will be there for display for the public.
Obviously, the demolition of a bridge of this size, one of the longest in the Southern Hemisphere, requires detailed planning. Greg Taylor explains the complexity of that planning and the time devoted to organising deconstruction, particularly the environmental issues.
How much of a challenge has it been?
Massive. 3 years in the planning.
Wow.
And I believe we've got a system in place, but it has a major challenge to get here. Machinery fine-tuned over the years, and we've had to get the exact equipment. And the environmental side of this, we knew it was always an issue, so we've come up with a design that we just simply don't drop anything in the water. Everything is caught.
That is good. The Hornibrook Bridge is almost 3 kilometres in length. How long will it take to demolish and complete the project?
10 to 12 months. It's weather prevailing and a few other things, but we feel we'll be okay with that.
And with similar landmarks that have been demolished, there has been an opportunity for the general public to purchase a small part as a memento. To your knowledge, will that happen with the Hornibrook Bridge, and how will it eventuate?
Yes, it can. The timber will be, it's dealt with through Australian architectural hardwoods, mainly because of the contaminants. What will be for sale will be free of contaminants and either ready for someone who wants to make a piece of furniture or have a new floor in their house. Steel-wise, we'll have, if someone wants their fence to come from the old bridge, that's fine. Some of the concrete's already gone out west to Roma to use under a new house.
Each of the major components from the bridge has a significant recycling value. Very little, if any, product goes to waste. We
would love to have kept the old bridge, the old Hornibrook Bridge, but one, it would have been very, very expensive to bring it back to a state of where people could use it safely. Would also meant that we'd have to cut down many, many trees to replace those timbers. So what we've done is preserved 100 metres on the Redcliffe side so that people will always have that link to the old bridge, and we'll really incorporate that into the local community. Great fishing platform and somewhere that families can use. We'll recycle what timber we can, and there are some very good spans of timber within the original bridge that we can recycle, or many of our timber bridges across the state. We've got one of the largest timber bridge networks in the nation. And importantly, we'll give the local historical society some of the timber once we get rid of the arsenic and some of those nasties involved in it, so that the community will always have a piece of that timber to remember. But that's progress, and we've always progressed in Queensland. We've got to preserve our heritage where we can, and I think the solution, 100-metre portal on that Redcliffe side, using that historical timber, keeping that bridge in place to that length, will really be a great addition to the local community.
We followed the chain of deconstruction, in particular the timber, to Kempsey in New South Wales, where we joined Juanita Grayson and witnessed the detailed recycling process of the ironbark recently recovered from the Hornibrook Bridge.
The rural town of Kempsey is located north of Sydney in New South Wales and about 600 kilometres south of the site of the Hornibrook Bridge in Redcliffe, Queensland. Kempsey is home to Australian architectural hardwoods who successfully tendered for the recycling of the timbers from the Hornibrook Bridge. Australian architectural hardwoods have been involved in the industry since 1993. Their experience, along with their association with many prominent architects, has meant the minimisation of the devastation of our natural ecology. Recycling timbers from projects such as the demolition of the Hornibrook Bridge means that there is less timber required from our rapidly decreasing resources, and it produces a quality of product that is second to none.
Andrew and Robin Brodie, company directors of Australian Architectural Hardwoods, joined marketing manager Jeff Milner and spoke with Juanita Grayson about their commitment to recycling timber products. We asked how and why they became interested in this process, and in particular the Hornibrook Bridge demolition.
Well, I'm told it's the largest, was the largest timber viaduct bridge in the Southern Hemisphere. Now that's quite a statement. We really didn't know what we're getting into until the stuff started turning up, and our eyes really opened up because it's turned out to be all Class 1 timbers. Class 1 is the most durable, it's a durability rating, and the material was all ironbark and tallowood, which are probably the most sought after and premium hardwoods in Australia. And there was nothing else, it's all grey ironbark and tallowood. And so that was wonderful, and the volume was fantastic, so we have continuity of supply. We can produce a standard section that people can buy and put into their future homes. They can plan ahead and know that we'll have the material there. Yeah, it's opened up a lot of possibilities.
What is the process for recycled timber from demolition to distribution? How does it work?
Yeah, well, that's a fairly big question. Basically, the material comes to us in various states of disrepair or affected by the service life. I suppose the biggest problem is getting metal out, and if we're talking about the Hornibrook Bridge, it's not easy. There are large embedded bolts, probably 35 diameter. Yeah, so they are difficult to get out. Also, there are spikes in the decking, and a lot of it's rusted off, and so it can be very difficult. But it's, if we persevere, we can get it done. It's not easy, it's expensive to do, but we can get a great result. And we prove this, it's yielding a very good finished product.
Australian Architectural Hardwoods has a passion for recycling timber, and also a commitment to the industry and the community at large. During the process, the company devotes a great deal of attention to safety, training and environmental issues. This commitment carries through to the end client.
We need individual skills. It's all hands-on, this job, to get the best result from the timber. Every single piece of demolition timber is different. It has to be treated in a different way. You cannot run it through a computerised machine. And so it means we're very labour intensive. There's a massive amount of work just getting the metal out. And we find that we can offer a huge amount of employment to the valley, and I think we're good for the district.
The young people in the area who don't have a lot of skills, they come here thinking it's an unskilled job that they can work in, and we've been finding that the older guys are actually imparting their knowledge with hands-on and teaching them how to identify timber, how each piece of timber has its little quirks, and we're finding that it's on-the-job training for these young guys, and they're actually staying here, being trained, and we're actually increasing the skill and keeping the timber industry alive, because there's new people are coming through and actually learning about the timber.
We have projects all over Australia that Hornibrook Bridge has gone to. One recent job is in the new casino in Perth. It's a restaurant over there that there's 680 square metres of Hornibrook timber.
Grahamwood Flooring is proudly Western Australian, an award-winning company established in 1979 that has progressed into being a leader in the manufacture and installation of timber flooring. Well known in the building industry for the installation of timber floors in large sports halls and commercial buildings, they are unsurpassed in quality. With another innovative project, Grahamwood Flooring refurbished the Rockpool restaurant at the Burswood Casino, Perth, using recycled timber sourced from the recently demolished Hornibrook Bridge in southeast Queensland. Spokesperson Jamie D'Souza explains.
It was chosen firstly for its colour. The owners were looking for a certain type of colour. Also the splits and all the age look. It's got bolts, holes and all that sort of stuff in it, which is a feature, just to make the floor look even better. The timber is a tallow wood, which is very, very hard, so that's what they needed for a restaurant. To us, it's important as much as the client wants it. They want to have this the recycled timber, and that way, because the wave of people that want this now is getting very, very, very high. So the green age is coming along with oil and using oil finishes and all that sort of stuff as well. So recycled is becoming bigger. Being a restaurant, you don't want clients getting hurt from bits of timber breaking away and all that sort of stuff. But that's why we chose a hard timber like the tallow wood, and I think the result was fantastic.
How much timber are you going to extract from the bridge?
Roast is about 5,000 tonnes of material.
And what would you yield from that?
We'll probably get something like 4,200 or something like that, because the bridge has been demolished for good reasons, because there's a lot of rotting material in there. And of 4,200, we'll probably get around about 2,500 tonnes of finished product, we hope.
Jeff, could you tell me who is the primary user of the end product? Have you got an example?
Well, I suppose a lot of it starts with the architects, and they specify us, for certain jobs, and they will get in touch with us relative to what we have coming in, and we provide samples until we all agree, the look they're trying to achieve, and then the builder gets involved with the job, and then he gets in touch with us, and the whole process starts from there. So I'm pretty lucky. I get to see the finished product all the time.
Jerry Rees is an architect based in northern New South Wales, a founding member of the Australian Architecture Association, fellow of the Australian Institute of Architects, and former president of the Rotary Club of Sydney. In addition to his broad community commitment, Jerry is also managing director of Rees Architects Proprietary Limited.
So what is a torii gate?
A torii gate, the original intention, it comes from Japan, and as you know, Shinto is the main religion there. It's a combination of old Japanese traditions and Buddhism. And birds are sacred in most Buddhist countries, in particular more so than the rest of the animal world. And this very structure, the Japanese had actually roofs that came out for about a meter out. And that's where all the birds were supposed to roost.
Ah.
So it was for the sacred birds to be close to the temple and roost and be happy.
The structure of the property in Nashua, bought in 2008, was brilliantly planned by others, but a harsh and cold statement executed in steel and straight forms. Jerry Rees set out with the intention to add some spiritual meaning to the property by using a highly organic material such as timber, assembled in shapes that are rounded and a strong evocation of old Japanese architecture. The placement of this new timber structure, a traditional torii gate, would give a powerful sense of entry to the residents.
But there is no way a fairly fragile structure like this could be built with green timber, being softwood or hardwood, because as you know, green timber tends to move. In other words, to put it simply, it's not dimensionally stable. All timber like this, quite apart from my love for it, is dimensionally stable. So whatever you carve, however fine it is, that's it. It will not move. It doesn't matter how much sun or water falls on it. It's going to stay like this.
It's beautiful.
And for a structure like this, which is meant to, hard sun, hard weather, hard winds, it won't change. It'll be the same in 10 years. Architecture has a very essential, crucial role to play in our lives, and us architects are very neglectful of our duty to the people and to the planet. Not in just making things for the sake of somebody's ego or whatever, but create small or big things, preferably out of timber, which will make people feel better. By making them feel better, we're going to help the general consciousness of everyone.
Do you feel an attachment to the history of this particular wood?
Yes. I'm amazed that through red gum, I was put in a knowledge of where it came from. There's a big difference. The timber I used in Sydney, which I was talking about before, I didn't know. I still don't know where it came from. Nobody was able to tell me. And to be able to trace it back, not just to the bridge, but getting the timber, to get it to the bridge, to then get it to here, I think is fantastic. This is what we're all about as humans.
When originally searching for timber for this particular project, initially we were looking for a certain colour and a certain character that we could really work with in this particular environment. It's a very natural environment. So further research actually found that we had a good level of supply from the Hornibrook Bridge, and we had a great consistency in that material because there was such vast quantities of timber. From there, further sampling and research through looking at the materiality of that, we then found that it was ideal in this particular purpose for our weatherboards and other sort of core elements such as our handrails and so forth. So.
The most appealing thing about the timber for me personally is the colour. I love the way that it almost ages the house and it makes it feel like it's been here for longer than it has. When you look at the structure from outside, it sits and it doesn't look like something that's been constructed over the past 12 months. It looks like something that was meant to be here. And the way that the colours of that timber just sort of blend with the environment, it's really beautiful. And I suppose I'm excited to use ironbark because of it being a hardwood. Ironbark because it's tough as nails, and we do have a termite problem here, so we're not going to encounter problems with that because they can't get into it. It's really good, strong wood.
Well, I think here what we've got is a timber that really glows. I mean, it's got such a nice quality to it. It's been, I guess, giving a certain warmth and character, which has been difficult to achieve with other timbers. But I think the physical colours, the hues of the timbers, and certainly its workability, which the builders have really been enjoying. So what we've been able to get is certainly particular characteristics of bushfire resistance, termite resistance, and that typical properties of a Class 1 hardwood, which has been very much an integral part of the building.
The reason we decided to go with James Cooper at Sanctum Design was because he's a sustainable architect. When you live in surroundings like this, you just can't take them for granted. Familiarity doesn't breed contempt here, it's just beautiful. And we really tried to incorporate a lot of the building materials from outside into our structure, the timber being the ironbark, is something which we're surrounded by. We've got ironbarks all around us, and our accompanying valley is called Ironbark Valley, so it was important we use that ironbark. The sandstones from a local quarry which sits within the valley itself, and with the hydronic heating, which, just we can burn the timber from the valley that's fallen, and we just really love the fact that we're able to live in a modern, contemporary home that also offers sustainable elements.
Moreton Bay Regional Council, together with the Queensland State Government, representing the general community, have legitimate demands to retain some heritage value from the Hornibrook Bridge.
Father, grant that we who serve you in the affairs of this council may have the wisdom in our deliberations, the guiding of your hands in our day-to-day decisions, and the grace to serve together to the best of our ability to advance the prosperity of our region. Thank you, councillors, and now the Lord's Prayer.
The deconstruction of the bridge, in partnership with Ironbark Demolition and Australian Architectural Hardwoods, has provided a strong workable relationship, reminiscent of that witnessed by M.R. Hornibrook during its construction between 1932 and 1935.
To my mind, I don't think there's any structure that has been built in Redcliffe that will have the same impact, either now, previously or into the future, than the construction of the Hornibrook Highway. I mean, Emmanuel Hornibrook has left a legacy that had changed the peninsula forever, connecting it to the northern suburbs and to the city, and I don't think it'll ever be surpassed.
Well, look, I think that the Hornibrook Bridge has served this community really well. I agree with all of Alan's sentiments that it is the greatest achievement, that it's the thing that's changed our community the most, I think the most significantly. But I think that it's going to be very fondly remembered forever by people, past generations, this current generation and those to come. I think it's got such a great part in our history that it won't be forgotten, and I think it's the grand old bridge that can now just retire gracefully and be remembered as people go out there and enjoy a little bit of recreation.
Prominent in the first part of our story was the commitment Redcliffe City Council had toward the construction of the new Ted Smout Bridge, and the care and concern it had for the demolition or deconstruction of the old Hornibrook Bridge. Redcliffe City Council has now been replaced by the Moreton Bay Regional Council, who through the good fortune of election retained Mayor Alan Sutherland. Supported by councillors James Horton and Ray Frawley, their interest today in the Hornibrook Bridge project is just as strong.
And Redcliffe is steeped in history, being the first European settlement in Queensland, and so that bridge was the longest viaduct in Australia when it was constructed. And it's good that we do have a historical record. And this council has been very supportive of this documentary in that we have given funding towards it, and that explains, Mr Mayor, very briefly and concisely why John is here today. And the structure itself was the longest bridge in the southern hemisphere and remained that way for many, many years. People said when he said, "I'm going to do this," they said, "Oh, it'll never work," and yet it did. And in the finish, even though the toll had never changed from day one, it was a shilling in those days, or 10 cents for cars, and sixpence or 5 cents for motorbikes. In all that time that it was up, it never changed the toll, and yet people in the finish were complaining about they're making too much money from this bridge. So it stands as a monument, to forward-thinking people, and we need more of Sir Manuel type people today.
So we come to the end of our journey, a journey that started in 1932. Over almost 80 years we have witnessed the development of a very special community. A community focused on providing its own employment when times were tough. A community that saw a challenge and built a bridge to meet a need. We saw that need flourish and change from a liability to an asset, and today that asset is being recycled and renewed to again serve a future community. During this process we spoke with Reg Jones, one of the original workers on the Hornibrook Bridge, and we met Jack McEwen, whose father Frederick was a timber cutter from the Kilcoy district. Roy Atkins and his sister Joy Brennan recounted tales of the time when their father was the original tollkeeper. Our story has been one of ordinary folk committed to a project with extraordinary outcomes. A story of triumph over adversity. The Hornibrook Bridge was built when Australia was in depression and provided work to hundreds of unemployed. In turn, the bridge provided a transport link to Brisbane and its northern suburbs, which was difficult prior to its construction. Despite criticism, a toll of 10 cents continued throughout its lifetime. A toll that was equitable and made the Hornibrook Bridge one of the most sound financial investments of its type in the state of Queensland.
Even today, the bridge stands as a reminder that the impossible can be achieved and what it is to be part of a community. As the destruction of this local landmark gives life to many worthy projects Australia-wide, it is easy to see that the Hornibrook Bridge is, and always will be, living history.